Some of the most powerful Pokemon in the Pokemon franchise have not yet made their way to Pokemon GO, and it might be several years before we see any of them. However, there are a handful of these super powerful Pokemon that are actually confirmed to be coming to Pokemon GO later this year, and I do think we need to talk about all of these future Pokemon so that we are ready for them. Alright, what's happening everyone? Count Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon GO video. Hope your day is going really well, and let's get right into it. So, for today's video, we're going to be talking about some of the most overpowered Pokemon in the Pokemon franchise that have not yet made their way to Pokemon GO. Some of these Pokemon are Pokemon that players have been waiting for several years, while others are Pokemon that you may not even be aware of. I think every single one of these Pokemon are going to create a significant impact once they are released, much to the same vein that some Pokemon that we recently got have already changed the game. So yeah, let's talk about the Pokemon that are going to be coming to Pokemon GO, starting off with two Pokemon that we already know are on the way. And these Pokemon are going to be the crowned forms of Zashian and Zamazenta. These two are confirmed to be coming to Pokemon GO this year with Pokemon GO Fest, and I am super excited at them arriving to this game. On top of them being very powerful Pokemon for raid battles and PvP, they are also going to have adventure effects, just like with the Necrozma fusion forms, as well as the Kyurem fusion forms, and Origin Form Dialga and Origin Form Palkia. The adventure effects alone are going to make these Pokemon incredibly useful. However, in terms of their stats, they're going to be extremely powerful, especially compared to their non-crowned counterparts. So yeah, I'm really excited for these, and I do think they're going to create a significant impact. Like I said, they're already confirmed to be coming to Pokemon GO later this year, and they're the only Pokemon on this list that we already know are coming. As for the other Pokemon, it could take several years, but I still think it's worth looking forward to these Pokemon. Now the next one is going to be one that we all thought we were going to get actually last year, and this Pokemon is considered the god of all Pokemon. It is, of course, Arceus. Now interestingly enough, in other Pokemon games, this Pokemon has already been featured, namely in TCG Pocket, but in terms of Pokemon GO, this is one of those Pokemon that is extremely overdue. Like, a lot of players have been wanting Arceus in Pokemon GO for a very long time, but I really do think Niantic, or in this case, Scopely, is holding off on the release of Arceus because they probably want to do some sort of special mechanic behind it. In case you didn't know, with Arceus, the typing and the moves of this Pokemon is going to change depending on what held item this Pokemon has, and I think that's something that we could look forward to. Once we can start seeing our Pokemon be able to hold items, it's around that time that I feel we're going to get Arceus, and by all means, it's going to be one of the most powerful Pokemon in the game. I do predict it's going to have an adventure effect, just like with all the other Pokemon with adventure effects. It just seems to make sense for a Pokemon to this caliber. And I also think in terms of battling, it's really going to depend on the held item mechanic. And I think that's really exciting because it could be one of those Pokemon that you could change depending on what needs you have. Like, if you need it for raid battles, maybe you could have it hold a specific item. And if you want it for PvP, you could have it hold on to a different specific item. And I like the idea of a Pokemon that changes its typing and its moveset depending on what item you're holding, because let's say you have different raid bosses where you need different counters. Well, Arceus could be your one-stop shop depending on the items that you have that you can have it hold. I think it's a really cool idea, and it's something that I really hope they nail down once it gets released. But yeah, if I were to put a timetable on when we can expect to see Arceus get added into the game, it really all depends. I mean, like I said, it's long overdue. I think a lot of players expected this Pokemon to get released with the Go Tour event of last year, but Niantic skipped it out. So yeah, I do think maybe in the next couple of years, I think this Pokemon will finally make its way to Pokemon GO, and believe me, it's going to be a major event. Alright, and the next Pokemon that I want to talk about is what a lot of people consider to be the complete endgame for Gigantamax and Dynamax content. And when it comes to the Pokemon franchise, it is one of the most overpowered Pokemon that they've ever released. and it is, of course, Eternatus. This is one of those Pokemon that is basically like an Avengers level threat. I mean, the Gigantamax form of Eternatus is one that you can't even get in the mainstream games because of just how large and just how powerful it is. And I think once we reach a point where Dynamax content and Gigantamax content is well established, that's when I believe we're going to get Eternatus. Now, considering that both Niantic and Scopely want to probably extend the life of Dynamax content, I can imagine that Eternatus is not going to be in the game for several years now. I probably think it's going to be in the game at one point, but at this point, I think because Dynamax content is so new, we're probably going to see Eternatus maybe several years from now, maybe around 5 years from now. That's kind of my prediction. But yeah, one day we're going to get this super powerful Pokemon, and it's definitely going to be insane. I think all the Gigantamax Pokemon that we've caught up to this point is going to culminate into a battle with Eternatus, and to be able to get Eternatus, that's definitely going to change up the game quite a bit. Alright, next up, let's talk about some legendary and mythical Pokemon that may not necessarily be as powerful as some of the Pokemon that I've already mentioned, but considering their iconography, I do believe that Scopely and Niantic are going to make them incredibly powerful. The first one of these is a Pokemon that actually got its own movie, and it's Zeraora. This Pokemon, I think, is going to be quite useful in the same vein as Pokemon like Lucario and I don't know, any other Pokemon that is also iconic. I think this Pokemon was always considered a very powerful Pokemon within the mainstream games, and that's always a good indicator for just how powerful they're going to be within Pokemon GO. And I do think Zeraora is going to be one of those Pokemon that is going to be a must-get. I'm really excited to see how Niantic would implement Zeraora into Pokemon GO. I think there's a lot of interesting things they could do, but I think the boring way would be, of course, to just simply have it as a special research reward for a Pokemon Go Fest or a Go Tour or something like that. I think they could do a lot of cool things, maybe with raid battles and Dynamax content with this Pokemon. Certainly they're utilizing Dynamax content in a right way, especially lately with Kubfu. But yeah, with Zeraora, I'm really curious to see how they're going to implement it. My prediction is that this Pokemon will be released maybe sometime within the next 2 years. I do think it's a Pokemon that they could definitely cater a Go Fest around. I think that's definitely a possibility, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I do think this Pokemon is definitely going to be a game changer. And then along the same lines, we got to talk about Calyrex. So, Calyrex, actually. I actually do not know which pronunciation it is for this Pokemon, but it is iconic. It's a Pokemon that they introduced with Sword and Shield, and considering we're in kind of like a season of Sword and Shield content, maybe we will see this Pokemon really soon. It's a very interesting Pokemon, considering that it has multiple forms, just like with Pokemon like Keldeo and with the crown forms of Zashian and Zamazenta. This Pokemon could certainly be incredibly powerful. Yeah, I do think that is a Pokemon that we will be getting sometime soon, and hopefully it's going to be as powerful and as iconic as it is in the mainstream games. And then finally, let's talk about two Pokemon that I've been wanting in Pokemon Go for a very long time, and these are two Pokemon that I think are going to be the biggest game changers that we are ever going to see. Even more so than Arceus, Eternatus, the crown forms of Zashian and Zamazenta. These Pokemon are definitely going to change the game in a significant way. And of course, I'm talking about the Mega Evolutions for Mewtwo. Yes, it has two different Mega Evolution forms. It's Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y, but regardless of these forms, they're both going to be incredibly powerful. They're probably going to be the strongest Mega Evolutions we will ever have in the game. I won't go so far as to say that they will probably have adventure effects. I think those are going to be saved for Pokemon like the crown forms of Zashian and Zamazenta, but at least with these two Pokemon, much to the same degree that Mega Rayquaza changed the game forever, these two are going to be incredibly powerful. And I do think that for a majority of players, once they get their hands on Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y, it's going to trivialize a lot of the PvE content in this game. And I do think it's going to be probably the biggest case of power creep in the game, because with these Pokemon alone, just based on their stats from the mainstream games and how they will translate over to Pokemon Go, it's going to make a lot of raids soloable. It's going to make a lot of raids just completely easy to take down, and I do think Niantic is going to have to change things up because these Pokemon are just that incredibly powerful. We've already seen the effects of what a Mega Evolution Legendary to the strength and power of Mega Mewtwo X and Y can do to the game. I mean, once Mega Rayquaza came out, it completely changed the game forever. A lot of raid bosses are now incredibly easy. There are certain raid bosses that players have now been able to solo, and it's going to be even more so once these Mega Evolutions get into the game. And I do predict it's going to be really soon, because once Pokemon Legends Zeta and Alpha, once that comes out, that's basically going to introduce new Mega Evolutions. So I think Niantic and Scopely will want to get all the old Mega Evolutions out of the way and then bring on the new Mega Evolutions. I do predict that's going to happen. I mean, it already seems like it's going in that direction. They're just constantly releasing new Mega Evolutions, and a lot of these are just useless, pointless Mega Evolutions that have been overdue in the game, and they're just finally just getting them out of the way. And I think that's ultimately going to lead to Mega Mewtwo X and Mega Mewtwo Y. They're going to be the last Mega Evolutions that we're going to see, and I do think it's going to be pretty soon. That is my hope, at least. Maybe this year, actually, or at the very least, I think it's going to be next year. But yeah, with that said, that's pretty much all the most overpowered Pokemon that we have yet to see in Pokemon Go, but considering that there's so many legendaries and so many mythicals that we have not yet seen in Pokemon Go, I'm sure there is a particular Pokemon that I completely missed. And if that is the case, make sure you mention it in the comments down below and tell me what you think about the Pokemon that I did talk about. And yeah, let's have a great discussion. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and found it to be insightful. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if it's your first time here, and don't forget the notification bell so you can stay up to date on whenever I upload videos. And real quick, let me give a shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. You make this channel content possible. If you want to support the Content Slow channel, if you want to support everything that I do, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you decide to become a paid Patreon member, that's going to be the way that you could play Pokemon Go with me, because I add every single one of my paid Patreon members. And that means for stuff like remote raids and the friendship system, opening and sending gifts. If you want to play Pokemon Go with me on the daily, then make sure you go and check out my Patreon. And if you want to support my channel in a completely different way, you're always welcome to do so by following me on social media. My handle is @Jinsula. I'm on the platforms that you see on the bottom of your screen. Make sure you go there and give me a follow, and you'll have access to some exclusive content. With all that said, that's going to be it for this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself today, and I'll see you tomorrow.